Welcome to the Toastmasters Experience. My name is Evelyn. Get inspired by today's Toastmasters Insights. Enjoy the show. And welcome to another episode of the Toastmasters Experience. I'm excited and delighted to have Verity Price on my show today. Welcome, Verity.
Well, thank you so much. So lovely to be here, Evelyn.
Now, I always like to start at the beginning. What motivated you to join Toastmasters, and what clubs are you in if you are currently in a club?
Oh, great question. So I'm currently in Toastmasters here in Cape Town. It's a club I founded when I was a division director back in 2015. And so it's lovely to be a member now. All the way back in 2011 was when I joined Toastmasters, and that was a little club called Two Oceans Toastmasters, also in Cape Town, in a little seaside village named Fishhook. And I honestly joined out of curiosity and for fun. My sister Kay was already a member. She was really dealing with social anxiety around speaking and had joined to overcome that. And after visiting the club to watch her do her icebreaker, I was just blown away by the community, the welcome, the support that she was getting. And I just knew there was something here for me. Even though I was already a professional speaker, I could see that this was where I was going to take my speaking to the next level. Mm-hmm. And honestly, Evelyn, the thing I never knew about Toastmasters, even though it says where leaders are made, I didn't realize that the biggest gift Toastmasters was going to give me was through the leadership opportunities, because that's really what shaped me in the first 10 years of being a member.
You've achieved your DTM.
I have. So I achieved my DTM 2 weeks before my son Dominic was born in 2011. And 2019, my word. And it was quite a fun way to achieve a DTM, because I fell pregnant. I realized I was going to become a mom. I was going to leave Toastmasters to focus on motherhood. And then I was looking at everything I had done in my journey, and I had done all the leadership things I needed to do. But because I'd been so involved in leadership, I hadn't been focused on speaking. And I had 25 speeches between me and my DTM. So I decided in 7 months of early pregnancy, before my little one was going to be born, to do those 25 speeches. And I did that final DTM speech 2 weeks before he was born. And the special thing about that speech was I decided to share the story of how my mum had taught me growing up to leave the world better than I find it. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I had no idea that that was the first version of the speech that would win me the semifinals 2 years later.
When you were pregnant, you gave all those speeches. Would you say that gave you an additional sort of creativity, or was there, I don't know, like being pregnant? Because, when you're pregnant, you think so differently. Do you think that helped you?
That's a really good question. I think it did. I think what it did was, because I was pregnant and there was this kind of ticking, let's call it a time bomb of how much time I had to do this, I just couldn't wait around for speeches to be perfect. So what I was doing was I would sign up to speak at a breakfast club, and I might actually be at an evening club that evening, and I needed 2 speeches for that day. So the day before, I would be hammering out 2 speech ideas, 2 stories, 2 things that had been, fun or significant moments in my life. And I was just doing the bare bones, speaking it through a few times, arriving at the club and delivering. So it was a wonderful way to build content and stories really quickly without going, I'm only going to do this when it's perfect.
Right.
And I think it taught me to see the value of looking at my life and finding things I could speak about without overthinking it.
Now, I know you were a professional speaker before you actually joined Toastmasters. So I don't know if you remember your very first speech that you gave at Toastmasters. How was that different from being a professional speaker?
So I remember my icebreaker. It was all based around my motto at the time as a singer and a speaker, which was speak your truth, live your dreams, be you. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of those 3 things to introduce myself to the club and how I was doing those things in my life. And I think if I look back, I think it was just the 5 to 7 minutes, the knowing that someone was going to evaluate it and I was going to get feedback is a very different level of pressure, and you think differently about a speech when you're doing it in that context. So I know I suddenly really enjoyed this 5 to 7 minute format because it helped me to distill my ideas into a short time frame rather than 45 minutes to an hour. So it was different, and it definitely taught me again how to find content and say it in bite-sized pieces.
And how did you find the feedback?
I love the feedback. It really, I mean, evaluations are the reason that I became a world champion, if I'm honest. The feedback I received, I was at a fabulous club. We had, district level evaluators in our club, and they really took it seriously. So that feedback was always designed to elevate everyone to become better speakers. Mm-hmm. And that's where my passion for evaluations grew, as I realized, like, wow, this is such an incredible skill to look at speeches in such a positively critical way, let's call it, and help elevate a speaker. So that was when I started going, I also want to give feedback. I also want to get good at this evaluations thing. And it was, amazing.
And when did you decide that you wanted to compete in the international speech competition?
Probably like many Toastmasters, Evelyn, the first time I competed, I didn't know I was competing in an international speech contest. I thought I was competing in the Fishhook speech contest because I had done no research.
Uh-huh.
And that was in 2012. And it was just like, oh, this will be fun. I was, already a professional speaker. So to be honest, I was a little bit arrogant about my ability as a speaker. And I threw a speech together, finished my CC6 at the time. That was your requirement. Now I think it's level 2 of pathways. Mm-hmm. But Kay, my sister, was also competing, and she was nervous. So she worked much harder than I did on that speech. And, she'd really studied what we were doing and what this was about. And I didn't have a clue. Mm-hmm. And she beat me. She beat me at the club. And I had to eat humble pie for 7 months, watching her go from Fishhook all the way to Orlando to the semifinal.
Oh, wow. Oh, is she still in Toastmasters?
She's recently left, but she also has been a Toastmaster for 14 years. And she came second in her semifinal to Ryan Avery, who 2 days later became the world champion. So watching her journey was, I always say it was inspiring and intimidating, because that was when I discovered what the International Speech Contest was, how, hard it was to get through the levels, and it really humbled me. Mm-hmm. So it took 3 years before I entered again in 2015. Mm-hmm. And there I came third in division. And at that point, my ego was like, no, this is not for you. Toastmasters doesn't appreciate your speaking style. What do they know? So interesting, the story tell out now. Mm-hmm. And I didn't enter again. I never entered again. In fact, I left Toastmasters in 2019, after doing my DTM, and became a mom. And if it hadn't been for lockdown and stepping in actually to help Toasted, who were wanting to close because they only had 6 members, mm-hmm. I rejoined virtually, and we rebuilt that club, and we needed to do a contest in 2021, and the rest is history.
So you rejoined in 2021, and I guess you've competed, and then you're at that level now, because I know that with 2021, it was all online. So you pretty much had to prepare differently. How did you prepare?
It was brutal. It was hard. I mean, my husband kept saying to me, do you think you're going to the Olympics? The way I was preparing. And I said, well, I think it's the Olympics of speaking. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed the process, because we also had our little one was 18 months. So, and we were in lockdown. But I enjoyed that I could write my speech, and then I could immediately just put my laptop up on a chair with my camera facing me, and I could record it, and I could watch back, mm-hmm. and I could see how it was going. And then I could send that recording to Kay, my sister, who was mentoring me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, my brother-in-law, who's not a Toastmaster, was also fabulous. And my husband, not a Toastmaster, show it to them and get there like, oh, that doesn't make sense. That was good. So it really was this co-created speech. Because of the virtual aspect, I kept recording myself, which in a in-person contest I'd never thought to do. So that was the upside of Zoom. I could watch it, redo it, do it again. Oh, that's better. That's how I can use the camera. So it was an intense process, but it was a wonderfully creative a process of evolving the speech and my delivery style for the format.
I did watch a YouTube video how you prepared, and I was just thinking as I was listening to, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so insane, because I think it was saying something like you visited 42 clubs or something like that, and you created this spreadsheet. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I realized when I made the semifinals, and I realized I really needed to practice, and it's the international speech contest. So what lockdown afforded us was the opportunity to practice internationally. And I, again, think that's one of the reasons I won, because if it hadn't been lockdown, I would have been practicing in Cape Town, getting Cape Town feedback, not international feedback. So I looked at who the semi-finalists were, and I ruled out all their districts. I got a list of all the districts and where they were in the world. I then calculated the time zones, so I understood which districts I could approach if it was kind of their morning, my afternoon, or Australia was actually incredibly helpful because I could always do that, kind of my mid-morning, your evening. And I started very strategically also with my son going, when are the best times for me to be practicing, and where in the world could I reach out to see if they'll have me, as long as it's not in the same district as one of the other semi-finalists. And it worked out really well. I just went onto Toastmasters website. I went to find a club. I put in the area I wanted to visit, and I emailed all those clubs. And I said, this is what I'm doing. I would love your feedback. I think it's an amazing opportunity for your members to see the work that goes in at this level. So you also want to show the club that there's something in it for them. They're not just helping the contestant.
Right.
And people were amazing. They opened their doors. Sometimes they let me practice both speeches. I had District 20 in Bahrain organized all their former district evaluators to do a special panel event for me where I did my 2 speeches. I got this barrage of feedback. People were incredible in supporting my endeavors. It was amazing.
And did you also have a coach, or were you just counting on visiting all these different clubs?
Oh, no, I definitely had a coach. So up until I won division my sister was mentoring me, and I was, getting a lot of feedback locally. And then before district, I realized I needed international eyes on my speech. And so I reached out to the 2005 world champion, Lance Miller, because we'd met when he'd visited South Africa in 2015 when I was division director. And so again, saying yes to a leadership opportunity meant that I met a world champion. And I'd hosted him in Cape Town. When I was trying to recharge and get Hosted going again in 2020, he did a virtual session for our club, which 200 people came to, and we gained 16 members, which was incredible. So, yeah, it was amazing. So Lance and I really had a friendship and a connection. So I reached out to him and asked if he would look at my speech and coach me. And he very generously, before district, said, Verity, I'll give you a session. Let me see your speech, and I will do one session with you as a gift, which in lockdown, when we weren't earning, was incredible. And Evelyn, I'm going to be honest, it was one of the hardest calls of my life. I had sent him the speech, a video, I'd sent him the script, and I honestly thought he was going to tell me, wow, Verity, this is a winning speech. This can really go the distance. And he came on the call and he kind of looked at me quizzically and he said, Verity, what do you think about your speech? Like, do you think it's strong enough? And I was like, oh. And then he started telling me all the things I could do to improve it. And it was hard. I only had a week. And he was asking me to really disrupt the way I was approaching it. And again, my ego was like, maybe what I'm doing is good enough. And I see this with the people I coach now. I recognize it because I know that part of me also exists. And then about halfway through the call, I thought, you know what? I'm going to pick up my pen. I'm going to make notes. He's a world champion. He knows more than I do. Let me do this. And I rewrote the speech and I won district. And that version was good enough to get me into the top 28 in the semifinals. And then I paid Lance to be my coach all the way to winning finals. Yeah, he was amazing.
And how do you choose? Because I've spoken to Jody Donsha, and I've also spoken to Furzy and Roger on the podcast. And How do you choose which speech you're going to use? Because obviously, you want to choose the best one. But if you don't go through semifinalists, you're not going to use, you know what I mean? So how did you choose your speeches?
Yeah, I didn't choose. For me, it was very clear. The speech I'd been competing with was my semifinal speech.
Okay.
So for me, it wasn't a choice. With the clients I work with now, we often are, they wanting to make that choice. But for me, it was like, this is the speech that's been winning. It's the one I've worked the hardest on. It's the one I rewrote the most and changed the most. I mean, it started being called Who's Walking Behind You, and it ended up being the challenge. So it changed a lot. But I just was very clear that I was competing with the speech about my mum. And then it was like, and the second speech I write needs to be better. It needs to be good enough to win the final. So I worked for 100 days on that final speech and I gave it everything. But the first time I was ever going to compete with it was in the finals. And I had to trust that it was my strongest speech.
What inspired you to write this speech? Was it because it was a story about your father, or?
That's exactly what it was. When I won districts and I knew I had 6 weeks to wait to hear if I made semifinals, I thought, well, I'm going to use this time to write a second speech. And I tell everyone, if you win a district, please do not waste time waiting to see if you get to semis to think of a second speech. So I started looking for speeches, but what gave me direction was I've been speaking about my mum for this whole contest. And I just suddenly had this humorous thought that if I arrive in heaven one day, I don't want to have to explain to Dad that I didn't write a speech about him.
Love that.
So it was, and I wrote 4 different speeches about him, stories about him, lessons he taught me. And I think it was the 23rd of May, if I'm not mistaken, at 3:00 in the morning. And so it was literally about 2 weeks after I'd won district. This speech woke me up at 3:00 in the morning. And it was the story of that letter that my dad had given me and how to turn my life around. I'd actually done a version of that in 2015 that got me to division because I've had that letter since I was 24. But a lot had changed since then. This was now, 8 years later or 6 years later. And it was, my life had changed. And so it was the new version of what had happened. And I wrote it at 3:00 in the morning, a very different version to what people saw in the finals. But when I finished it, I just knew. I knew that this was the speech I would take to the finals. And the strange part that not a lot of people know is that first version at 3 in the morning was sharing one of the things I did after getting my dad's letter to kind of change my attitude and be more grateful and be more positive, was I did a challenge on Facebook called 100 Happy Days. And that was to take one picture a day for 100 days of something that had made me happy. And that was what this first version was about, how I started doing that and how my life turned around. And sitting there at now 4:00 in the morning, I went, I wonder how many days the finals is from today.
Wow.
And I counted it. 100 days away.
Wow, that was the universe telling you.
I started the 100 Happy Days challenge that day.
Wow.
And one day 100 was the day that I won.
Wow, I love that. So you became the world champion. Now, obviously, it's online. So how did you celebrate?
Right up until the finals, I was always on my own. I would be competing, and then I was normally at my parents-in-law house because they had better Wi-Fi, and then we'd wait for the announcement, and my husband would come running in with my son, and when I won district, we were jumping around. Semi-finals, by then we were allowed to gather small groups of people, so I watched the semi-finals with my club members at someone's house. But they only announced the results at 2:00 in the morning. So I woke up and saw that I'd made the final. We had, from getting the news that we'd made the finals, which I got at 3:00 in the morning, we had to record at 4:00 that afternoon. So the contest was pre-recorded. So it was quite a day. And we recorded, and then we had to wait 3 days for them to actually screen it at the online convention. And I decided to gather friends together for that. We were allowed 50 people at a gathering at that point as lockdown was easing.
Yeah.
And we got given the most beautiful venue at the waterfront in Cape Town, overlooking Table Mountain. People arrived with South African flags. South Africa is very famous for this awful plastic trumpet called a vuvuzela, which we made famous in the Football World Cup. So they like blow this thing. It's a very South African thing. And everyone, Toastmasters and friends, there was 50 of us that watched the final. And when they announced that I had won, it just erupted. It was the most joyful, extraordinary experience of my life. So I was very lucky. For the first time in 7 months, I celebrated that win with friends and family. I had a bizarre feeling. From the beginning, before I even entered the contest, I had this very strange premonition that I was going to win. And I doubted it the whole way through, but other people, like from the area contest, I started getting WhatsApps going, I know this sounds weird, but do you have a second speech? And then at division and something, I know this is weird, but I feel like you're going to win this contest this year.
Wow.
And so we just knew we had to, regardless of the outcome, we needed to gather and see where it had taken us.
Did you decide after you won the competition that going into coaching is something that you wanted to do?
No, I didn't. So I didn't decide to coach. You spoke about Jody, don't you?
Yeah.
She messaged me within a week of winning, I think, saying, I want to work with you. I want your help. And I was like, what? Okay? Like, how does this work? And Jody was my first client. And we went on such a beautiful journey that first year. It was, I got her to win district, and we got to see her go all the way to semis, which we've managed to do twice because she's such an incredible speaker. And so Jody was the start of my coaching. And then suddenly people started asking, and I thought, okay, well, let me put something on my website. So it was very organic, but I have been so blessed now we're going into our 4th contest season since I won. But the last 3 seasons, I've managed to get 15 people to semis, 4 of them into the finals, and 3 of them to 3rd place in the world. So it's extraordinary to support people.
Now, you probably can't reveal any secrets, but so when someone comes and wants you to coach them, what is the process?
So it's different for each person. I recently did a post saying, some people come to me and they think I'm just going to help them polish their speech, and often they discover I'm there to panel beat it, a bit like what Lance did for me. So it depends where the speech is at. And what I see around the world is different districts have got different ideas of what a winning speech looks like. There is sometimes confusion about how much drama and body language and things should be in a speech. And so I often get sent speeches where there's a lot of potential, but the person they're just trying to tick the boxes that a judges might be looking for, and they're not in the speech yet. And so my job is to make them dig deep, because that's what my coach did for me. And it's not always a pretty process, but we end up with tears of revelations, like, oh my word, I never realized this is what this lesson was, or this is how this moment changed me. So it's different with each person, but we really always focus first on speech development. It's 50% of the mark. So we have to make sure that is tight. Then you've got 20% for language. So most of our work is getting that. You want to be getting 70%, like just ticking all the boxes, but authentically from the heart, powerful stories. And then we get into delivery, which is 30%. People often get confused. I think they think it's like 70% delivery, 30% content, but it isn't. And so you need to know that your story is strong, that it's beautifully developed, that it's completely expressing you and your voice. And then the delivery often flows naturally from that.
So obviously you have people who come to you who are quite experienced speakers. Have you had a client where you actually thought, now this is probably a bit personal, but that you thought, oh gosh, I don't know if I can work with them because they're not getting it?
Interestingly, I mean, I think if you asked any of the world champion coaches, they'll say sometimes you're going, I'm not sure if I'm the right coach. I'm not sure if this is landing. So I have had that. And I've had pushback from clients before where maybe I've asked them to go deeper than they wanted to go. And it happened with a lovely client I was working with. And I remember being so horrified that the session kind of went in an unexpected direction. And, I was just trying to look for more and they weren't ready to go there. And I was like, oh dear, have I compromised this relationship? And I said to them, you know what, I will give you another free session just to help us iron this out, because I also think it's important that, everyone is happy. And they were very grateful for that. But I still felt like, oh, did I push too much? Should I have been this? Should I have been that? So it's more that I doubt myself, to be honest. But what was funny was that they were busy doing one of the masterclasses with one of the other world champions as well. And they went to that masterclass and heard exactly the same feedback I'd been giving and came back to me and was like, so sorry, Verity, that I see why you were asking me to do that. I'm sorry that I resisted. And we found a much better speech as a result. So I've learned to trust when I'm pushing.
Right,
that,
right.
that intuitively, I can't always explain it rationally, but intuitively, I know when there's more to a speech and I know when someone's got more to them. And so I will push to the level that I believe that person can go to. And not everyone's ready to go or push their delivery. And then we meet where they're at. So
Yeah.
I find that works for me. And I've been very lucky. I've had wonderful people seek me out.
Oh no, that's fantastic. What are some common like speaking mistakes that you've actually seen, or is there like a common sort of issue that people who come to you for coaching that they ask about?
So one of the big common mistakes is people are trying to push humor into speeches where maybe they're just not going into the depth of what happened. And the humor they're so busy trying to make it funny or light that they're glossing over like a really important moment, or they're really missing the impact and the value to the audience. Other things are people sometimes think, oh, well, if it's very dramatic and there's a lot of drama, that's what the audience needs. And I have to sometimes go, this is too much for an audience to deal with in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Can we take one aspect and share that in a, authentic, and for me, it's always what's going to be valuable for the audience. And I think that's where people sometimes get lost. Also putting too many details of a story into a speech and not finding one clear golden thread, and then just telling the parts of the story that strengthen that thread and bring the message to life. So a lot of what we do is the editing and the re-looking and refining. How do we say this differently? How do we say this with less words? How do we say this for more impact? And still in their authentic voice. So it's a challenging process. And some people, they only need 1 or 2 sessions and they're good enough to walk away and do the changes themselves. And other clients, we'll do 12 sessions and we'll have such a beautiful journey, really getting into what it is they're wanting to share with the audience. So I normally have a discovery call with anyone who's wanting to work with me. We just do a quick 15 minutes, understanding where they're at, letting them get to know me, because I always say to someone, I think it helps to work with a coach, but like, I'm not the only coach. It needs to be the right coach for you. And so a lot of people will start with 3 sessions. 1 session is generally not enough, but I do written reviews. I sometimes also do video reviews where I send someone a recording of me giving them feedback. So depending on people's budget, I also want to support how I can. But I've found that the average that people, especially in contest, will be about 6 sessions. And then as we're getting more towards the semis, then we're moving into the 6 to 12 session mark, especially if we're looking for that second speech, because a lot of people will come to me when they've won district and they don't even know what they want to speak about yet. And we go on that journey. They bring me all their possible stories. We workshop it, we brainstorm. So it's a very intense process, but it's lovely when you suddenly go, oh, this is what I want to share with the world.
Oh, fantastic. You have been speaking for a long time, also a professional singer. What does communication mean to you?
Communication means getting what's in your heart into someone else's heart and mind. That's, for me, effective communication. If what your truth is inside of you gets understood and absorbed by someone else, then you've communicated.
Okay. And how do you think it's changed though in just the current world with the younger generation and how social media has come up? How do you think it's changed?
I think such a good question. Well, I think it's at the moment it's short, it's sharp, it's funny. It's, if you look at what gets traction online, and what gets attention isn't necessarily what we would go, okay, well, that's communicating. It's a lot of it is entertainment. But I think the fundamentals of what moves people and what matters to people hasn't changed that much.
Mm.
But I do think in the 14 years that I've been in Toastmasters, I have seen a significant change in how much more honest and raw and vulnerable people are in the speeches they give in clubs. Whereas when I joined, it was far more formal and, people weren't always opening up and sharing from the heart. But certainly here in South Africa, I see far more authentic speeches from a lot of the new younger Toastmasters that are joining. And that excites me. It means that we're communicating from a place of openness and honesty, and more people are dropping the facade. So that's in spoken communication. I can't speak to social media.
Now, what has been something in Toastmasters that has totally surprised you?
I mean, this is a bit of a strange answer, but it's because of coaching and working with people in districts around the world. I've been saddened and surprised to hear the level of politics that happens in districts, and where people feel like if they're from a certain area or they speak a different language to the main language, they're not going to get through, or they're a different religion or culture, that those people never win in their districts. And I thought they were making it up. But the more that I've worked in different areas, I've seen the patterns, and I go, that's a pity. That's a pity when we're not just listening to a speech on its merit, and we're looking at, almost, I'm saying political, but you know what I mean, quite strategic or biases. And that's been sad. So maybe not the answer you're expecting, but that's been my biggest surprise working around the world, going, we are very lucky in South Africa that the best speaker wins. There is no agenda. Otherwise, an English white woman from Cape Town would never have won in our district. And that seems to happen in some districts. And that makes me sad, where, the majority group always wins. And it shouldn't be like that.
So I've done a little bit of research on you, and I know that you started off, you were quite shy before you started singing. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what made you decide that I just got to get out there now? Because I've watched you online and I've watched you sing and just the different TED Talks, and you're so confident. I find you so confident, and the camera is your friend. So what has inspired you to go from that shy, young, probably teenager to someone who is, globally, you really do shine on stage? What do you think has been the biggest inspiration for you?
Well, firstly, thank you. I'll take it that I shine on stage. That's very kind. I think the thing that the pivotal moment that pushed me to face my fears and start sharing my voice with the world was my dad dying.
Right.
24 is, there's never a good time to lose a parent, but 24 is a time when life, well, certainly for me, I felt invincible and I could do whatever I wanted. I was still shy and I wasn't facing my fears or living my dreams, but it was a shock that my dad died. I was like, what? This, life is finite, things end. And that was when I was like, I'm not going to get to the end of my life with a long list of things I wish I'd done. And so that was the start of facing my fears. The honest truth is, Evelyn, it wasn't quick. My dad died when I was 24. It took me 3 years to get on stage at 27, and start performing professionally at 29. Record an album at 32. It was like really long periods of time, and all still with, sometimes crippling insecurity and self-doubt that I can push through. I can still get on that stage, but I can get off that stage and go, oh, I'm not sure if that was good enough. So people, I think, just be very careful of looking anyone on a stage that looks confident and looks like they've got it sorted. That's not always the internal landscape, but it's part of what makes us human and makes us amazing, is that we are able to push past those fears and let the best part of us shine out. And then it's a lifelong journey to heal all those other bits that don't trust our worth, or,
Yeah.
So that it's an ongoing journey for me, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you've consistently worked at becoming better. That's what I feel that I've observed. It's like, wow, it's like now she's doing this and now she's doing this. And it just, it just looks like you're out to do the best that you possibly can. So in saying that, what are your current projects that you're working on? I know you're coaching, but what are other things that you're doing?
I'm really letting life unfold at the moment, if I'm honest. I'm so busy with my corporate, my workshop Present with Power that I run for companies around the world. I do it online or in person, a lot of coaching. And so that is really my focus. I've actually just finished putting together a online contest course, which I've called Conquering Contests, which I'm going to release shortly because not everyone can afford coaching. And so I've put together a 25 module, little bite-sized pieces, taking people through the mindset they need, how to write a speech, how to find the stories, what the judges are looking for. So that's been my little project that I've been working on. And we're going to release it soon as a resource for clubs to even just buy and share with their members, or for members to just buy and use while they're competing. So that's been a fun project, because I just realized not enough people get access to the knowledge they need if they're taking the contest seriously. And that's my one little project. But other than that, I'm letting the rest unfold.
Yeah. And I just love your Instagram, because you do release bite-sized nuggets of just wisdom that I think really do benefit people. How can people reach out to you if they want to just, send a message or about your coaching? What's the best way to contact you?
Definitely just visit my website, verityprice.com. I do have a free newsletter that people can sign up for. You'll get an email every 2 weeks with more tips and tricks just to help take your speaking to the next level. And then Instagram, LinkedIn, at Verity Price Speaks. As you say, I really do try to keep sharing content that will help people become the best speakers that they can be. So those are the two best places. But verityprice.com, you can contact me. People can have a discovery call if they want coaching, and we can take it from there.
Verity, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, but I want to ask you one last question. What advice would you give someone considering joining Toastmasters?
I would say join. Don't waste time thinking about joining. I don't know who I would be if I had joined this organization, 10 years earlier. So the best time to join Toastmasters is now. The best time was 10 years ago, but next best time is now. And find a club that works for you, a club where you feel that sense of community and camaraderie. And then just let the journey take you, because the journey will surprise you. It will teach you more about yourself than you can learn anywhere else, and with beautiful people supporting you. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Verity.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your company. Please tune in next time to the Toastmasters Experience.